First contact. In the vast expanse of the Orion Arm, the Zorgan Empire reigned supreme. For millennia, this advanced insectoid species had crushed civilizations and subjugated worlds with their superior technology and ruthless tactics. Led by the cunning overlord Xax, the Zorgans seemed unstoppable in their relentless expansion across the stars. Captain Zyloff stood on the bridge of the Zorgan exploration vessel Indomitable, his compound eyes scanning the unfamiliar star system they had just entered. The ship's sleek, biomechanical hull pulsed with an eerie bioluminescence, a testament to the Zorgans' mastery of genetic engineering. "Captain, we're picking up an unknown vessel on the long-range scanners," chirped his subordinate, a spindly creature named Vrak. "It appears to be a primitive craft, likely incapable of faster-than-light travel." Zyloff's antennae twitched with interest. "A new species? How intriguing. Let's move in for a closer look. Perhaps they'll make good slaves for the Empire." As the Indomitable glided silently towards the alien ship, Zyloff couldn't help but feel a twinge of amusement. The small, boxy vessel was a far cry from the organic curves and advanced technology of Zorgan ships. Its hull was a patchwork of metal plates, and it lacked any visible weapons or defenses. "Scan the ship for life signs," Zyloff commanded. Vrak's claws danced across the control panel. "I'm detecting a crew of 8, Captain. They appear to be a bipedal mammalian species. Our database has no record of them." Zyloff leaned forward, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. "Open a communication channel. Let's greet our new subjects." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the interior of the alien ship. Zyloff was taken aback by the sight of the creatures that stared back at him. They were tall, with pale, hairless skin and small, beady eyes. Their bodies were draped in crude, form-fitting garments, and they carried themselves with a strange air of confidence. "Attention, alien vessel," Zyloff began, his voice translated into a series of guttural sounds by the ship's computer. "You are in the presence of the Zorgan Empire. Surrender yourselves, and your ship immediately, and you will be spared. Resist, and face annihilation." To Zyloff's shock, the aliens did not cower in fear or beg for mercy. Instead, a steely-eyed male with short, graying hair stepped forward and fixed the Zorgan captain with a defiant glare. "I am Captain Marcus Steele of the Earth ship Endeavor," the alien replied in heavily accented Zorgan. "We come in peace, seeking to explore and establish contact with other civilizations. We do not recognize your claim to this system and will not surrender our ship or our freedom." Zyloff's eyes narrowed, and his exoskeleton bristled with rage. How dare these primitive creatures defy the mighty Zorgan Empire? He would teach them the price of insolence. "You have sealed your fate, Captain Steele," Zyloff hissed. "Prepare to be boarded and enslaved." With a flick of his claw, Zyloff terminated the communication link. He turned to his crew, his voice dripping with venom. "Ready the tractor beam and prepare a boarding party. These humans will soon learn the folly of their arrogance." As the Indomitable moved to ensnare the Endeavor, Captain Steele turned to his crew, his face grim but determined. "Red alert, all hands to battle stations. We're not going down without a fight." The bridge of the Endeavor burst into activity as the crew rushed to their posts. The ship's weapon systems hummed to life, and its engines flared as it prepared to evade the Zorgan tractor beam. In the CIC, Lieutenant Commander Elena Ramirez monitored the Zorgan ship's movements, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain, I'm detecting a power surge from the alien vessel. They're attempting to lock onto us with some kind of energy beam." Steele nodded, his jaw set. "Evasive maneuvers, helm. Let's not make it easy for them." As the Endeavor bobbed and weaved, the Indomitable's tractor beam lashed out, trying to ensnare the human ship, but the Endeavor was smaller and more agile, its fusion thrusters allowing it to slip out of the beam's grasp time and time again. On the Indomitable, Zyloff slammed his claw against the armrest of his command chair, his frustration mounting. "Intensify forward firepower. I want that ship disabled and its crew in chains." The Zorgon ship opened fire, its bioplasma cannons hurling bolts of searing energy towards the Endeavor. The human vessel shuddered under the onslaught, its shields flaring as they absorbed the brunt of the attack. In engineering, Chief Engineer Luca Moretti worked frantically to keep the ship's systems operational. "Shields down to 60%, Captain," he reported over the comm. "We can't take much more of this." Steele's mind raced as he considered their options. They were outgunned and outmatched, but he refused to let his crew fall into the clutches of these alien aggressors. Suddenly, an idea struck him, a desperate gamble, but one that might just give them a fighting chance. "Moretti, can you rig the fusion drive to overload on my command?" Steele asked, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. There was a momentary pause before Moretti responded, his tone laced with understanding. "Aye, Captain. Give me 2 minutes." Steele turned to Ramirez, his eyes locked on the tactical display. "Commander, plot a collision course with the Zorgon ship. We're going to give them a taste of human ingenuity." Ramirez hesitated for a split second before nodding grimly. "Aye, sir." Collision course plotted. As the Endeavor lurched towards the Indomitable, Steele addressed his crew over the ship-wide comm. "All hands, brace for impact. We're about to show these aliens what humans are made of." The Endeavor hurtled towards the Zorgon ship, its hull battered and scorched, but still defiantly intact. On the Indomitable, Xylos' eyes widened in disbelief as he realized the human ship's intentions. Evasive action. He screeched, but it was too late. At the last possible moment, Steele gave the order. "Moretti, overload the fusion drive. Now." The Endeavor's engines flared blindingly bright before detonating in a cataclysmic explosion. The blast engulfed the Indomitable, its bioorganic hull writhing and buckling under the onslaught of raw energy and shrapnel. On the bridge of the Zorgon ship, consoles exploded and crew members were hurled to the deck as the vessel shuddered and listed, its systems critically damaged. Amidst the chaos, Xyloth struggled to regain control, his once proud ship now crippled and adrift. He stared at the flickering view screen in stunned silence, watching as the remnants of the Endeavor drifted past, a shattered but defiant testament to the tenacity of its crew. In that moment, a chilling realization dawned on the Zorgon captain. These humans, these seemingly primitive creatures, had just dealt a humiliating blow to the Indomitable, a ship that had conquered dozens of worlds and crushed countless civilizations. As the Zorgon Empire reeled from the shock of this unprecedented defeat, whispers began to spread among the stars, whispers of a new power rising, a species that refused to bow to the might of the Zorgons, a species called humanity. And so, with the first salvo fired in a war that would reshape the galaxy, the stage was set for a clash of civilizations, unlike any the universe had ever seen. The Zorgons, once the uncontested masters of the stars, now faced a foe that would test their resolve and their very way of life. The humans, once a mere curiosity on the galactic stage, had just taken their first step towards becoming the apex predators of the cosmos. The war had begun, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Unexpected resistance. News of the Indomitable's humiliating defeat spread like wildfire through the Zorgon Empire. On the capital world of Zorgania Prime, Overlord Tex seethed with rage as he listened to Captain Xyloth's report, his compound eyes blazing with fury. "You let a primitive species best you," Kazak's hissed, his voice dripping with venom. The Indomitable, pride of the Zorgon fleet, crippled by a handful of hairless apes. Xyloth cowered before his ruler, his exoskeleton quivering with fear. "My lord, these humans, they fought with a ferocity and cunning unlike anything we've encountered before. Their tactics were unconventional, unpredictable." Sax slammed his claw on the throne, silencing the captain. "I don't want excuses, Xyloth. I want results. These humans must be taught a lesson they won't soon forget." The Overlord turned to his assembled war council, his mandibles clicking with barely contained rage. "Prepare the fleet. We will crush these upstarts and bring their world to its knees. The Zorgan Empire will not be defied. As the Zorgan war machine mobilized, the remnants of the Endeavor drifted through the void, a testament to human resilience and sacrifice. Aboard the crippled ship, Captain Marcus Steele and his surviving crew worked tirelessly to keep life support operational and send out a distress call. "Any luck with the comm array, Ramirez?" Steele asked, his voice strained with exhaustion. Lieutenant Commander Elena Ramirez shook her head, her eyes bloodshot from staring at flickering consoles. "Negative, Captain. The array took heavy damage in the explosion. We're cut off." Steele sighed heavily, his gaze drifting to the stars outside the viewport. "Keep trying. Earth needs to know what we've discovered out here. The Zorgans won't take this defeat lightly." As if on cue, the ship's sensors lit up with a flurry of activity. Chief Engineer Luca Moretti, his face smudged with grease and sweat, called out from his station, "Captain, I'm picking up multiple warp signatures, a whole damn fleet of them." Steele felt a cold knot of dread form in his stomach. The Zorgans were coming, and the Endeavor was in no shape to fight. "Moretti, can we get the engines back online? We need to get out of here. Warn Earth." Moretti shook his head grimly. "No chance, Captain. The fusion drive is shot. We're dead in the water." Steele closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. When he opened them again, they blazed with a fierce determination. "Then we make our stand here. We buy Earth as much time as we can." The crew of the Endeavor set to work, jury-rigging what weapons and defenses they could from the ship's battered systems. They knew they were hopelessly outmatched, but they were determined to go down fighting, to make the Zorgans pay for every inch of space. As the Zorgan fleet dropped out of warp, the void lit up with the eerie bioluminescence of their ships. The Endeavor, a tiny mote of defiance against the vast armada, opened fire with everything it had left. The battle was short and brutal. The Endeavor, outgunned and outnumbered, was pounded by bioplasma cannons and antimatter torpedoes. Its hull buckled and ruptured, the screams of the dying mingling with the wail of overloading systems. On the bridge, Steele and his crew fought on, even as consoles exploded and bulkheads collapsed around them. They poured every ounce of skill and determination into the fight, taking down Zorgan ships with clever feints and desperate gambits. But it wasn't enough. One by one, the Endeavor's systems failed, its weapons falling silent, its engines guttering out. The Zorgans, sensing victory, closed in for the kill. In those final moments, as the bridge filled with smoke and the ship shuddered under the onslaught, Captain Steele addressed his crew one last time. "It's been an honor serving with you all. We may fall here, but we've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Our sacrifice will not be in vain." With a final, defiant roar, the Endeavor exploded, taking a dozen Zorgan ships with it in a blinding flash of light and debris. The remaining Zorgan vessels, battered but triumphant, regrouped and set course for Earth, ready to deliver the Empire's wrath upon the upstart species that had dared to challenge them. But even as the Zorgans celebrated their victory, they couldn't shake the unease that crept through their ranks. The humans had fought with a skill and tenacity that belied their primitive technology. They had shown a capacity for innovation and improvisation that the rigid, hierarchical Zorgans found both alien and unsettling. And so, as the Zorgan fleet bore down on Earth, ready to subjugate a new world and crush a nascent threat, they carried with them the seeds of doubt, a gnawing uncertainty that perhaps they had underestimated the humans, that perhaps this war would not be the swift, easy victory they had anticipated. On Earth, as the planet's defenses mobilized and its people braced for the coming storm, a new resolve took hold, a grim determination to fight, to survive, to show the galaxy that humanity would not go gentle into the night. The stage was set for a clash of civilizations, a war that would shake the very foundations of the galaxy. And as the first shots were fired, and the first ships fell from the sky, one thing became clear: The Zorgans may have superior technology and numbers, but the humans had something else. A fierce, unyielding spirit that would not be broken, no matter the odds. The war for Earth, for the very future of humanity, had begun. And the Zorgans, for all their might and arrogance, were about to learn the true meaning of resistance. The Zorgan Empire strikes back. As the Zorgan Armada descended upon Earth, the planet's defenses sprang into action. Orbital defense platforms and hastily assembled fleets moved to intercept the invaders, while on the surface, military forces and civilian militias prepared for the ground war to come. But despite humanity's valiant efforts, the sheer might of the Zorgan Empire proved overwhelming. The invaders' bioships tore through Earth's defenses like a scythe through wheat, their advanced weapons and shielding making them all but invulnerable to conventional attacks. In the skies above Earth's cities, Zorgan dropships disgorged hordes of insectoid warriors, their chitinous armor gleaming in the sun as they swarmed over the planet's surface. The Terran defenders fought back with everything they had: rifles, tanks, even improvised weapons cobbled together from civilian vehicles and industrial equipment. But it wasn't enough. Step by inexorable step, the Zorgans advanced, their numbers and technology overwhelming humanity's defenses. Cities fell, one by one, as the invaders established their dominion over the conquered territories. In New York, the iconic skyline burned as Zorgan bioships rained down plasma fire from above. In London, the streets ran red with blood as insectoid warriors clashed with desperate human defenders. In Moscow, in Tokyo, in Cairo, across the globe, the story was the same. Humanity, for all its courage and defiance, was being pushed back, inexorably, toward the brink of defeat. As the situation grew more desperate, the remnants of Earth's governments and military commands retreated to hidden bunkers and secret bases, determined to coordinate the resistance and search for any weakness in the Zorgan war machine. In one such base, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Thaddeus Vance pored over holographic maps of the global battlefield, his brow furrowed with worry and exhaustion. A career soldier with decades of experience, Vance had never faced a foe like the Zorgans, an enemy that seemed to have stepped straight out of humanity's worst nightmares. As he studied the latest reports from the front lines, a young aide approached, her face etched with a mixture of fear and determination. "Sir, we've lost contact with the European and Asian commands, and our forces in South America are reporting Zorgan breakthroughs on all fronts." Vance closed his eyes for a moment, the weight of the world bearing down on his shoulders. When he opened them again, they blazed with a fierce resolve. "We're not done yet, Lieutenant. As long as there's a single human left fighting, we're not done." He turned to the assembled officers and civilian leaders, his voice ringing out with authority. "We need to change our tactics. The Zorgans are too strong, too advanced for us to beat them in a straight-up fight. We need to hit them where they're weak, where they won't expect it." A murmur of agreement ran through the room, tinged with a desperate hope. Vance continued, his words painting a picture of a new kind of war, a war fought not with massed armies and mighty fleets, but with guile, with cunning, with the kind of unconventional thinking that had always been humanity's greatest strength. "We'll disperse our forces, break them down into small, mobile units. We'll strike at the Zorgan supply lines, their communications, their command and control. We'll make them bleed for every inch of our world." As the plan took shape, a new energy filled the room, a sense of purpose, of defiance, of a species pushed to the brink, but still unwilling to surrender. The war had entered a new phase, a phase where the superior numbers and technology of the Zorgans would be met with the tenacity, the adaptability, the sheer bloody-minded stubbornness of the human spirit. And so, as the Zorgan Empire tightened its grip on Earth, as the planet's cities fell, and its people were driven into hiding, a new resistance was born. A resistance that would fight in the shadows, in the ruins, in the very heart of the occupied territories. It was a resistance born of desperation, of the primal human need to survive, to protect one's own. But it was also a resistance born of hope. Hope that even against the most impossible odds, humanity would find a way to prevail, to turn the tide, to reclaim its world from the claws of the invaders. The Zorgans, flush with the arrogance of victory, could not yet see the seeds of their own destruction being sown. They could not yet understand the depths of human resilience, the lengths to which a species would go to defend its home. But they would learn. In the days and weeks and months to come, as the resistance grew and the battle for Earth entered a new desperate phase, the Zorgans would come to understand the true meaning of the old human saying, "Beware the fury of a patient man." For the humans, pushed to the brink of annihilation, had found within themselves a fury that would shake the very stars, a fury that would, in the end, prove the Zorgans' undoing. The war for Earth had entered a new chapter, a chapter written in blood and fire, in courage and sacrifice. And though the road ahead was dark and perilous, humanity would walk it to the end, united by a single unshakable conviction. This was their world, and they would take it back, whatever the cost. The underground resistance. In the ruins of a once thriving metropolis, a small group of human survivors huddled in the shadows, their eyes scanning the debris-strewn streets for any sign of Zorgan patrols. They were a ragtag band, civilians and soldiers alike, united by a single purpose: to strike back against the alien invaders who had conquered their world. Their leader was a former Special Forces operative named Jake Hawkeye Raven. Tough, resourceful, and fiercely loyal to his people, Raven had been fighting the Zorgans since the early days of the invasion, leading daring raids and sabotage missions against the enemy's supply lines and command centers. As the group made their way through the shattered cityscape, Raven's second-in-command, a young woman named Sarah Sparrow Davis, moved to his side, her rifle at the ready. "Hawkeye, we're getting low on supplies. We need to find a way to restock before we take on any more missions." Raven nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I know, Sparrow, but we can't afford to let up now. The Zorgans are tightening their grip on the city. We need to keep hitting them, keep them off balance." As if on cue, the sound of chittering Zorgan voices echoed from a nearby street, accompanied by the ominous thud of insectoid feet on pavement. Raven signaled his team to take cover, his hand tightening on the grip of his weapon. The Zorgan patrol came into view, a dozen heavily armed warriors led by a towering overseer, its chitinous armor adorned with the glowing sigils of rank. Raven's team held their breath as the patrol drew closer, their hearts pounding in their chests. At the last moment, just as the Zorgans were about to pass their hiding spot, Raven gave the signal. The humans erupted from cover, their weapons blazing, catching the aliens off guard. The overseer went down first, its head vaporized by a well-placed shot from Raven's rifle. The rest of the patrol soon followed, cut down by a hail of human gunfire. As quickly as it had begun, the skirmish was over. Raven's team moved in, scavenging what weapons and supplies they could from the fallen Zorgans. It was a small victory, but one that would keep them going for a little while longer. As they made their way back to their hidden base, Raven's mind was already racing ahead, planning their next move. The Zorgans were adapting to human tactics, getting better at predicting and countering their attacks. They needed to find a new edge, a new way to strike at the heart of the occupation. Back at the base, as the team rested and resupplied, Raven called a meeting of his top lieutenants. Among them was Dr. Elena Ivanova, a brilliant xenobiologist who had been studying the Zorgans since their first appearance in the solar system. "Doc, tell me you got something," Raven said, his voice tight with urgency. "We need a new angle, a new weakness to exploit." Ivanova nodded, her eyes glinting with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "I think I might have something. I've been analyzing the data we've gathered on the Zorgans' biotechnology, and I think I've found a vulnerability." She brought up a holographic display, showing a detailed schematic of a Zorgan bioship. "You see these conduits here, running through the ship's organic matrix. They're like the ship's circulatory system, carrying nutrients and energy to all its systems. Raven leaned in, his eyes narrowing. Okay, so what's the vulnerability? Ivanova pointed to a specific section of the schematic. These junction points, where the conduits intersect. If we can introduce a targeted virus into the ship's systems, it could spread through these junctions, causing cascading failures throughout the entire vessel. Raven's eyes widened, a grim smile spreading across his face. A virus, like a biological weapon. Ivanova nodded. Exactly. But the trick will be getting it into their systems in the first place. We'll need to infiltrate one of their ships, find a way to access their biocomputer network. Raven was silent for a long moment, his mind churning with possibilities. Finally, he spoke, his voice filled with a quiet determination. Then that's what we'll do. We'll find a way inside, plant the virus, and watch the Zorgon's own technology turn against them. It was a daring plan, one that would require all their skills and resourcefulness to pull off. But as Raven looked around at his team, at the fire in their eyes and the steel in their spines, he knew they were ready for the challenge. In the days that followed, the Resistance threw itself into preparations for the mission. Ivanova and her team worked tirelessly to perfect the virus, while Raven and his operatives scouted Zorgon facilities, looking for a way in. Finally, they found their target, a Zorgon bioship, grounded for repairs and resupply at a heavily guarded maintenance depot. It was a risky proposition, infiltrating such a high-value target, but Raven knew that the potential payoff was worth the danger. Under cover of darkness, Raven and a hand-picked team made their approach, using all their skills in stealth and infiltration to slip past the Zorgon perimeter. Once inside the depot, they split up, each team member moving to carry out their assigned role in the plan. Raven and Sparrow made their way to the bioship itself, a looming, pulsating mass of organic and metallic components. With Ivanova's virus loaded into a portable injector, they searched for an access point, a way to introduce the payload into the ship's systems. As they worked, the sound of Zorgon alarms began to blare throughout the depot. Their infiltration had been discovered. Raven knew they had only moments before the entire place was swarming with Zorgon warriors. With a final, desperate effort, they located a pulsing conduit, a vein carrying vital fluids through the ship's body. Raven plunged the injector into the fleshy tube, watching as the viral payload disappeared into the ship's circulatory system. And then they were running, fighting their way back out of the depot as the Zorgon forces closed in around them. It was a harrowing escape, a blur of gunfire and explosions and narrow misses. But somehow, through skill and luck and sheer stubborn determination, they made it out, disappearing into the night as the depot erupted into chaos behind them. In the days that followed, as the virus spread through the Zorgon biofleet, the Resistance watched with growing hope and amazement as the mighty alien warships began to fail, one by one. Ivanova's creation was doing its work, turning the Zorgon's greatest weapon against them. It was a turning point in the war, a moment when humanity's fortunes began to shift. And as word of the victory spread throughout the Resistance, as hope kindled anew in the hearts of Earth's embattled defenders, one thing became clear. The Zorgons, for all their power and advanced technology, had underestimated the most important factor in any conflict: the unbreakable will of those who fight for their home, for their very survival. The underground Resistance, born in the crucible of occupation and hardship, had struck a blow against the invaders that would resound across the planet. And though the war was far from over, though many battles and sacrifices still lay ahead, humanity now knew, beyond any doubt, that victory was possible. The Zorgons had unleashed a firestorm upon Earth, but in the hearts of its defenders, a fire now burned even brighter, the fire of a species that would never, ever surrender, turning the tide. The success of the Resistance's viral attack on the Zorgon biofleet sent shockwaves throughout the occupied Earth. In hidden bases and secret communication networks, the news spread like wildfire. The invaders were vulnerable. Humanity had struck a blow against the seemingly invincible alien juggernaut. In the heart of the resistance, Jake Hawkeye Raven and his team celebrated their victory, even as they planned their next move. They knew that the Zorgans would not take this setback lying down. The aliens would be looking for the source of the virus, seeking to eliminate the threat before it could strike again. But Raven had no intention of giving them that chance. With the help of Dr. Elena Ivanova and her team of scientists, he began to formulate a plan to turn the tide of the war once and for all. At the center of this plan was a daring raid on a heavily guarded Zorgan command center, buried deep beneath the ruins of a conquered city. Intelligence reports suggested that this facility housed a critical component of the Zorgans' communication and control network, a biocomputer that coordinated the actions of their forces across the planet. If the Resistance could capture or destroy this biocomputer, it would throw the Zorgan occupation into chaos, giving humanity a window of opportunity to strike back and reclaim their world. But getting to the command center would be no easy feat. The facility was protected by layers of defenses, both technological and biological. Zorgan warriors patrolled its perimeter, while advanced sensor systems scanned for any hint of intrusion. Raven knew that a frontal assault would be suicidal. Instead, he proposed a multi-pronged infiltration, with several teams approaching the facility from different angles, each with their own specific objectives. One team, led by Raven himself, would attempt to penetrate the command center's outer defenses, using a combination of stealth and misdirection to slip past the Zorgan guards. Once inside, they would make their way to the biocomputer chamber, planting explosives to destroy the alien hardware. Meanwhile, a second team, led by Sarah Sparrow Davis, would stage a diversionary attack on a nearby Zorgan outpost, drawing attention and resources away from the main target. The third team, under the command of a grizzled resistance veteran known as Bear, would stand ready to extract the infiltration teams once their mission was complete. It was a risky plan, one that would require split-second timing and flawless execution. But Raven and his team were determined to see it through. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. As the day of the raid approached, the resistance buzzed with activity. Weapons were checked and rechecked, plans were reviewed and refined, and messages of support and encouragement flowed in from resistance cells around the world. When the fateful moment arrived, Raven and his team moved out, slipping through the ruins of the city like ghosts. They had trained for this moment, honed their skills in countless battles and skirmishes, but nothing could have fully prepared them for the challenges that lay ahead. As they approached the Zorgan command center, the team split up, each group moving to carry out their assigned tasks. Raven and his infiltration unit made their way to the facility's perimeter, using every trick and tactic they had learned to evade detection. But even as they closed in on their target, the sound of explosions and gunfire erupted from the direction of Sparrow's diversion. The Zorgans had taken the bait, but the ferocity of their response was staggering. Raven knew that his comrades were fighting for their lives to give his team their window of opportunity. With grim determination, Raven and his team breached the command center's outer defenses, fighting their way through a gauntlet of Zorgan warriors and automated security systems. Every step was bought with blood and sweat, every moment a desperate struggle for survival. But against all odds, they made it to the biocomputer chamber. As Raven placed the explosives, he couldn't help but marvel at the alien technology that surrounded him. The pulsing organic circuitry, the eerie bioluminescent glow. It was a reminder of just how far the Zorgans had advanced beyond humanity's understanding. But it was also a reminder of what was at stake. This technology, for all its wonders, had been turned against Earth, used to subjugate and oppress. It had to be destroyed, so that humanity could have a fighting chance. As the explosives detonated, the biocomputer chamber erupted in a maelstrom of fire and debris. Raven and his team fought their way back out of the facility, dodging Zorgan counterattacks and collapsing infrastructure. They emerged into the war-torn city, battered but alive, as Bear's extraction team swooped in to whisk them to safety. In the aftermath of the raid, as the resistance regrouped and assessed the damage, it became clear that the mission had been a resounding success. The destruction of the biocomputer had thrown the Zorgan command structure into disarray, causing confusion and infighting among the alien ranks. Seizing the opportunity, resistance forces around the world launched a coordinated offensive, striking at key Zorgan strongholds and supply lines. The sudden surge of human attacks, combined with the chaos within the Zorgan hierarchy, began to turn the tide of the war. In the weeks that followed, the resistance drove the Zorgans back, liberating city after city, region after region. The aliens, once so confident in their superiority, now found themselves on the defensive, struggling to maintain their grip on the planet they had conquered. And at the forefront of this global counterattack was Jake Raven and his team, the heroes of the underground resistance. They had shown the world that the Zorgans were not invincible, that humanity still had the strength and the will to fight for its freedom. The road ahead was still long and perilous. The Zorgans would not give up their prize easily, and many battles still lay ahead. But for the first time since the invasion began, humanity had hope. Hope that they could win this war, that they could take back their planet and their future. And as Raven looked out over the liberated streets of a once-conquered city, he knew that this hope, this unbreakable spirit, was the most powerful weapon of all. It was the weapon that would carry humanity to victory, no matter how long or how hard the fight might be. The Zorgans had underestimated the strength of the human soul, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. The tide had turned, and Earth's defenders would not rest until every last invader had been driven from their world. For in the hearts of every human, a fire now burned, the fire of freedom, of defiance, of a species that would never surrender its birthright. And against that fire, even the might of an alien empire could not stand. Victory and a new era. As the Resistance's counterattack gained momentum, the Zorgan occupation began to crumble. The destruction of their command center and the ensuing chaos had dealt a severe blow to the aliens' ability to coordinate their forces and respond to the growing human insurgency. Across the globe, resistance cells struck at Zorgan strongholds and supply lines, using the weapons and tactics they had honed during the long months of occupation. In the skies above Earth, human pilots engaged Zorgan bioships in daring dogfights, their skills and courage compensating for their technological disadvantage. On the ground, resistance fighters waged a guerrilla war against the alien invaders, ambushing Zorgan patrols and sabotaging their infrastructure. The once-conquered streets of Earth's cities became battlegrounds as humans and aliens clashed in desperate, bloody urban combat. At the forefront of this global uprising were Jake Hawkeye Raven and his team, the heroes who had struck the first decisive blow against the Zorgan war machine. They moved from one hotspot to another, lending their skills and leadership to the resistance forces battling to liberate their world. In the heart of the Zorgan-occupied territories, Raven and his comrades fought their way into the aliens' most heavily defended strongholds, planting explosives and sabotaging critical systems. They were the tip of the spear, the vanguard of humanity's counterattack. But even as the resistance drove the Zorgans back, the aliens refused to surrender. With the fanatical devotion of a species that had never known defeat, they clung to their conquered territory, determined to make the humans pay for every inch of ground they reclaimed. In the final days of the war, as the Zorgan position on Earth grew more and more untenable, the aliens unleashed a devastating Scorch Earth campaign. Bioships rained down plasma fire on human cities, while Zorgan warriors rampaged through the streets, slaughtering civilians and resistance fighters alike. It was a nightmare of fire and blood, a last desperate attempt by the Zorgans to break humanity's will to fight. But even in the face of this horror, Earth's defenders refused to yield. In a series of climactic battles, Raven and the resistance forces stormed the last major Zorgan strongholds, engaging the aliens in brutal close-quarters combat. The fighting was intense and merciless, with neither side giving quarter or asking for mercy. But in the end, through courage, sacrifice, and sheer, unyielding determination, the humans prevailed. The Zorgan command structure on Earth collapsed, and the surviving alien warriors were forced to flee, abandoning the planet they had once conquered. As news of the victory spread, people across the globe took to the streets in joyous celebration. Tears of relief and triumph flowed freely as humanity savored the end of the long, terrible ordeal they had endured. In the aftermath of the war, as Earth began to rebuild and heal, the true scope of what had been achieved started to sink in. Humanity had not just survived an alien invasion. They had beaten back an empire that had subjugated countless worlds, an empire that had seemed invincible. The implications were staggering. The Zorgan defeat at Earth's hands sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy as other conquered species began to take heart from humanity's example. Whispers of rebellion and resistance spread like wildfire as the myth of Zorgan invincibility crumbled. On Earth, as the rebuilding process got underway, a new sense of unity and purpose took hold. The old divisions that had once seemed so important, nations, ideologies, creeds, now seemed petty in the face of what humanity had endured and achieved together. A new global government took shape, one dedicated to ensuring that Earth would never again be caught unprepared for the challenges and threats of the wider cosmos. Scientific research and space exploration became top priorities as humans sought to understand and engage with the vast, wondrous, and sometimes perilous universe they had suddenly become a part of. As for Jake Raven and his fellow resistance leaders, they found themselves hailed as heroes, living legends whose names would be remembered and honored for generations to come. But for all the accolades and praise heaped upon them, they remained humble, dedicated to serving the world they had fought so hard to save. For they knew, better than anyone, that the true heroes of this war were the countless men and women who had fought and bled and died for Earth's freedom. The soldiers and civilians, the resistance fighters, and ordinary people who had never given up, never surrendered, even in the darkest of times. It was their sacrifice, their courage, that had won this victory, and it was their spirit, the unbreakable human spirit, that would carry Earth forward into the new era that dawned in the wake of the Zorgan War. An era of exploration and discovery, of challenges and opportunities that humanity had scarcely dared to imagine before. An era in which Earth would take its rightful place among the stars, not as a conquered vassal, but as a free and equal member of the galactic community. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be new dangers to face, new enemies to confront, as humanity ventured out into the vast expanse of space. But armed with the knowledge of what they had already overcome, Earth's people faced this uncertain future with courage and determination. They had looked into the face of annihilation and had not blinked. They had stood their ground against the most terrifying foe imaginable and had emerged victorious. They were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. For they were human. They were the men and women of Earth, and they would never, ever back down from a fight. As Jake Raven looked up at the stars, he felt a profound sense of pride and purpose wash over him. The war was over, but the real adventure was just beginning. And he knew that no matter what trials and tribulations lay ahead, humanity would face them together, united by an unbreakable bond forged in the crucible of war. They had won their freedom, these men and women of Earth. Now they would use that freedom to explore, to discover, to build a future brighter than any they had ever known. The age of the Zorgan Empire was over. The age of humanity had just begun, and it was going to be one hell of a ride.